Hello everyone, Dio here, and I think we need to have a talk about how different kinds of physical media have been packaged over the years and what not to do and what to avoid when it comes to packaging physical media of any kind. When it comes to making sure that a lot of your media still continues to work, packaging is incredibly important in how that continues to work. Because especially with something like CDs or DVDs or even Blu-rays to an extent, scratches can lead pretty quickly to your piece of media being completely unplayable to the point where your player may not even read what you're about to listen to or what you're about to watch. Which, when it comes to keeping something like this, that's incredibly important. And also, on a more minor note, how it looks on a shelf is also, and how much space it takes on a shelf is incredibly important. So let's look at some examples at how not to package your media. One of the biggest violators of this, one of the most egregious examples is Mill Creek Entertainment. If you do not know who Mill Creek Entertainment is, they are a company that mostly produces cheap box sets of TV shows and cheap collections of public domain movies. So let's take, for example, this set of Ultraman, Volume 1. This doesn't look too bad, right? Besides the sticker that from the store I got it from. If you look at the front, you look at the back, looks actually pretty professional. Looks like standard fare. It's in the bigger box, which was sort of a staple of the era in which this DVD set came out in. But what's this? Why is the disc in this little fucking slip? Now you may think, why is this a problem? Why, does this really matter? Yeah. Because when you're pulling the disc out, especially when you're not so careful with it, the back of the disc will scrape against this little slip, which is an issue because it can easily lead to scuffs and scratches, making your favorite Ultraman episodes unwatchable. Especially if you have a kid who's just like, Mommy, I want to watch Ultraman, and it just fucking rips it out of there. That can be a problem, and it can lead to things like scratches. To look at another example of Mill Creek, just cheaply fucking packaging shit, let's look at these 20 family holiday Christmas movies. All of these movies, I am pretty sure, are public domain Christmas movies that no one cares about, that no one has heard of. Also, happy holidays, by the way, because this video is coming out around that time. So you may look at this and be like, there's only 5 movies here. But otherwise, it looks like pretty standard fare. However, when you realize that to save as much money as possible, decided to just stack 5 fucking discs on top of each other. Especially if you're not completely delicate with the discs, this can easily lead to scratches, to fingerprints, to all kinds of other stuff, which can easily render your disc unplayable. Let's look at an example of how it should be done. Now, a company like Disney has a lot more money that they're willing to spend than a company like Mill Creek, which just produces, box sets and other shit like that on the cheap. If you couldn't tell already, this is the DVD for Lion King 1.5. Definitely not their most extravagant DVD showing. They didn't even come in a slipcover, at least not what I have here. May have when we got it like 20 years ago. But God damn it, I feel old. But you see, they have a little folder here. The one disc is in its own thing, which this disc has been scratched up and has been rendered basically unwatchable, but that's for completely different reasons. You flip it over, and the second disc with all the bonus features and shit is in its own thing. This is a very smart way to package discs without worrying about things like scratching. And then you have something that kind of does something like this. Pride FC Volume 4. Pride FC was basically the Japanese UFC back in the day, for those that are not aware. So you see that they kind of do the disc folder thing, as I'm going to refer to it. They kind of do it. But they also just, like, you can also kind of tell that maybe a bit that it's, like, cheaper, made out of a cheaper plastic. And it's just, and this can easily lead to discs. I've had discs fall out of this Pride set multiple times, which can lead to damage, but is also just fucking annoying. Just annoying. Let me show you a brief example as to why jewel cases are mostly obsolete, and why a lot of CD manufacturers will just put their CDs in a better packaging. So if you want to preserve the case, also this is some Project 66 album, I don't think anyone's going to really care. Now that did take a little bit of strength, and I think that was probably the biggest break that I've ever seen. But it snapped like a fucking twig. You also may be aware that most PS1 games were also packaged with these kinds of jewel cases. And the issue is that it snaps like a fucking twig. It is incredibly fragile. One, like, slight twist can just break it in half, which renders the packaging almost completely fucking broken, just completely unusable. And this is why a lot of people use things like CD binders, which is a topic for a whole completely different video. Now, for an example of how to do proper CD packaging in the modern era, this is Mesmerize by System of a Down. I think this was their last album. You see that it bends really nice. You know, the inside looks pretty cool, which is kind of a minor note at this point. Just bends really nice, you know, it's very flexible. Definitely a lot more difficult to break, as it is made of a much better material. Now, when you're a VHS collector and you have about 300-400 tapes in your collection, shelf space starts to become very important. This is why a lot of VHS collectors do not like clamshells. If you are not familiar with what clamshells were, they were a way for companies to package their kids' media, because kids would easily fucking rip up the slipcover to try to get to the sweet, sweet tape inside. The problem is that these are incredibly bulky and take up a lot of shelf space if you are the type of person that collects clamshells to begin with, which, as a nostalgic early 2000s fuck, I definitely have more than a few clamshells in my collection. Here's a pretty standard one from around the early to mid 2000s, Finding Nemo. This clamshell, it looks really nice. It does look really nice in isolation. However, it is also about like 2 to 3 times bigger than the tape, and also has kind of these like almost sharp edges that's like kind of makes it kind of a bitch to grab sometimes, and might even be possible to like cut yourself on it if you're just grabbing it willy-nilly. But the problem is, a lot of tape collectors just have their tapes just out by themselves, not in the box, which is something I don't really understand, and here's why. Now, besides maybe the blue header, which kind of does make it stand out from a lot of tapes, if you just flipped it on your side and you did not know that this was a thing, that this was an indicator of what this was, would you be able to tell which movie this was just by looking at the side of the tape? No. Like on a shelf or whatever? No, you wouldn't. You more than likely would not. And the thing is that really it doesn't matter, like, about, like, damage and stuff on, like, you know, like, CDs and stuff. Because I can fucking... yeah, I can just beat the fucking thing against the table and it'll probably still play just fine. Tapes were a lot more durable in that sense, even if they did sacrifice quality in some senses. Now, even though, as you may have seen in the thumbnail, that the patent for these kinds of clamshells was filed in 1994. However, something resembling clamshells have been around since the 80s. Take, for example, this collector's edition box of I Love Lucy, which was produced by CBS sometime, I think, in the mid to late 80s. Now, this is also is a lot creakier. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't make ASMR content, though, so I'm going to stop. So, the problem is that how the tape is held up. And it barely is. Now, they try to put these little slots in here to try to keep the tape held up in its little prison. However, basically anytime you open one of these old clamshells, it's going to fucking fall onto your lap or onto the floor, and it's going to be incredibly annoying each time. Not going to cause damage or anything, because again, tapes are incredibly durable. But it is probably going to cause some minor inconvenience and some annoyance. Some rental boxes, you know, from places like fucking Blockbuster or Hollywood Video would also kind of suffer a similar annoyance. Or would put the tapes in a kind of prison that'd make it really fucking hard to try to get out of. Because, you know, they were trying to prevent, like, theft and shit. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about, you know, really briefly, you know, like, different kinds of packaging and what not to do or what to avoid if you are a collector that's trying to prevent your media being damaged. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Happy hunting, and I hope you enjoyed the video.